G'day and welcome to another podcast live, learning a little bit more about people in our community. And I can't thank you enough, Lisa, for joining me today to have a bit of a conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Well, there's a reason why I've invited you on, because you're currently representing the Legalize Cannabis Party to get a seat in the House of Representatives. How did you go about even wanting to do that?
It's actually really funny because I generally don't have political aspirations. I find a lot of people in politics, have gone through the ranks and then, running themselves. So I've worked in the drug and alcohol sector for about 14 years in Victoria. And so along those years, became really passionate about evidence-based policy making, and Legalize Cannabis was definitely a party in Victoria particularly that really stood behind sensible drug policy, evidence-based policy making. And so when there was an opportunity to run in Dunkley, it's the first time that we've run federally in Dunkley. It just seemed to be a really well-aligned match. So, values are the same: social justice, human rights, personal freedoms. And our Senate candidate, Fiona Patton, is a fabulous human and fabulous voice to have as well. So just seemed to be really well-aligned. So,
fantastic.
My first rodeo.
Giddy up, and get out there and give it a crack, right?
Yep.
And see what happens, because that's what it's about.
100%.
Now, the House of Representatives. So stepping into the House of Representatives, if you get in there, what would you be hoping to achieve?
I'm super passionate about having more diverse voices around the table. So in terms of hoping to achieve, really advocating for, of course, cannabis reform, looking at getting safe, affordable, accessible medicinal cannabis, and then overall looking at changing those federal-based legislations so the states have more autonomy in how they actually regulate and legalise cannabis, and all of the additional policies that actually interface with that as well.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of those additional policies, because that's something that really interests me, because I'm someone who has done a lot of work in the drug and alcohol sector and support men going through some pretty difficult times. A lot of the times that is an addiction. And, I have probably a different opinion to most, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about your policies and what you're looking to implement.
I'm really intrigued. I could ask you about your opinions as well, because I'm curious by nature, so that I love to hear different viewpoints as well. So, what do we mean about the legalisation and regulation of cannabis? Is that so really advocating that it should be treated like the laws are 100 years old. They're really outdated laws, and they're not based on evidence or evidence of harm or anything like that. We're really advocating that it should be regulated and treated the same way as alcohol and tobacco, so not subject to, ever increasing levels of tax or anything like that. It's actually really looking at how we can actually develop an industry that's beneficial to the Australian community as well, because hemp is a really versatile material. So, looking at all of the different elements when it comes to cannabis and how it can actually benefit our community, medicinal included.
Well, I will give you my opinion on that, because
please.
I've spent a lot of time talking to different people about different things. I'm great friends with the heads of Mind Medicine Australia, and my personal opinion, probably judge me if you like, I'm not fussed, but is that drugs should be legalised. I do not think the having illegal drugs is benefiting us in any which way. I think we're better off understanding the system than pushing it under the carpet, and it creates more pain and more violence and more problems in society by having it illegal. So that's just my personal opinion with the experiences that I've had.
I share your opinion because of both the experiences I've had personally and also in before the drug and alcohol sector, I worked in the justice system. So looking at the harms caused by the war on drugs, the stigma and discrimination, people that are too fearful to go and, access support or treatment or disclose use, it just becomes this bitterness in society that then creates more division, and it's not based on evidence. This is the thing that I think I'm really advocating about, is that, like, let's look at the evidence. ACT have had it legalized for years, and all of the fears that there'll be more people using, young people will use, there'll be more traffic accidents, none of them are founded in evidence. So it's not like we're looking at an evidence base that's in America or another society that's different from ours. It's in Australia. It's there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And medicinal cannabis. Sorry, I can rabbit on. Sorry, Scott.
Oh, that's good.
Medicinal cannabis, it was super interesting because I've had so many people, when they found out I'm running for Legalize Cannabis Party, have spoken about their experience with it, or their friends, and saying it's, and I think the impact that has is significant. And if it is a medicine, it is a medicine, and it can actually help multiple people with multiple ailments, why should it be so difficult to access? It's makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But I really think that there's so much fear around the conversation of drugs, just for the title of drugs, that creates more problems than actually taking the time to understand all parts of it. But so much of that is in our society, right? What we fear, we push under the carpet and we don't deal with it, rather than actually getting a deeper understanding of the impact and how we can do it better, and how can we make things like I've always. I'm going to overshare here, but one of the fascinating things for me is when people go to hospital, they have the highest quality drugs you can get: opium, heroin, cocaine, just to numb the pain. Why, when they leave hospital, are they not addicted? That's because the pain has ceased. When the pain stops, you no longer need to numb it. And there's no different to the street drugs, right? People generally, those that get addicted are those that are numbing the pain, right? Human nature, we move towards pleasure and away from pain. So that is a whole nother conversation. There's a great book called Chasing the Scream by Johann Hari that I can proudly say Johann's a mate. So, so that conversation for me is something that I hope in time we're courageous enough to have. So,
I completely concur, and I've seen the harms that having that the war on drugs actually creates. It sucks people into the justice system that are not dangers to the community, that are actually, it should be personal freedoms and they're right, but yet they're actually criminalised, which then has long-term impacts on being able to get a job, the stigma, the judgment, everything else. So it's time that we actually change that. I really believe that we need to stop having fear drive politics.
That's a whole other conversation, which I love, right? Because unfortunately, until our leaders start projecting campaigns that are based upon support and love, then we're going to constantly get what we've got, and that's a really interesting conversation for me. Today's about you, and for me, it's about educating people why you would actually want to do this. And legalizing cannabis is one part of your campaign. What other things are you wanting to implement?
So our policy platform, it's not a broad platform, and that's also interesting. And I guess because I haven't ever run before, and people would be asking, well, what are your other policies? And we don't have an array of policies. Ours is very specific to the legalisation and regulation of cannabis. But what we do bring is a set of values. And so, when every piece of policy is put across the desk, then we look at it with those values. And I've been so privileged to watch our state members, Rachel Payne and David Edershank, they're in the upper house in Victorian government. I see how they operate in Parliament. I see the values that they bring to pieces of legislation, and they're the ones that are there at 4 a.m. because they're passionate. They're the ones there that want to actually get the language right in this legislation and policy making, because that is what is important. It's not just ticking the box. And so, in terms of looking at different policy platforms, it's actually the values that we bring. So then we've got that consistency across any party that introduces a piece of legislation. It's like, is this aligning? Is this what our community want? Let's listen to our community, listen to the concerns, listen to and speak about that, and then actually advocate for that in Parliament. So
yeah, look, I like that, and I'm going to try and summarise a bit, and I could be wrong. But what I'm hearing at the moment is that legalizing cannabis is what your focus is to create an impact in that area. However, you want people to understand that you're here to tackle a fear, regardless of what comes at us. We're going to investigate it, and we're going to focus on providing evidence-based policies, evidence-based hand up, I agree, into Parliament. Is that what I'm hearing?
100%. And having more diverse voices that are looking at the legislation. And I think my determination to really elevate different voices at that decision-making level has come from walking alongside so many people, thousands of people in our community who are deeply affected by these policies and decisions that are made, in behind closed doors, and they don't have a seat at the table. And there's that real disconnect from when policies and legislation is made, and then the rollout, what is the impact on the ground. So, having more diverse voices, and it just brings up new ideas, new things that weren't considered, and it actually makes a piece of legislation more impactful and more considered, and it doesn't unnecessarily marginalise our already marginalised community. And that's something that really drives me, is let's not cause more harm by introducing policies and legislation. It's let's actually look at unity and actually how we can support the community.
How would you create that unity if you get the opportunity to represent our community in the House of Representatives?
I would be looking at every opportunity to provide platforms for the diverse voices from Dunkley. So this isn't just about how we can actually advocate for marginalised. It's actually bringing people together. And I think our electorate of Dunkley is one of the most diverse electorates in wealth, so wealth distribution. So we've got really entrenched pockets of disadvantage, some of the most disadvantaged areas of Australia for socioeconomic. And then neighbouring that, we have some areas of exceptionally high wealth. And I see a lot of narratives that come out in the media and from, people in positions of influence that actually create greater division. That we should be getting rid of the drug users and the homeless, and that's actually, we need to actually start changing that narrative, we actually need unity. We need community coming together to help elevate everyone. And that's going to be of benefit to those that are in those really high levels of wealth, as well as those that are marginalised and disadvantaged. So changing the language, changing what the language and what's being said out in the communities, I think the vital step to starting that unity.
Yeah, I can really appreciate that, because I know myself, when I was sitting in the Bayside Community Kitchen, getting to know quite a few of the community members in and around Young Street. A lot of the language around them, they're not human, and they so are. And everyone's got a story, and just because you can see those using the drugs in that part of town, spend some time in the higher socio-demographic and you'll see a lot of drug use too. I don't. It's not governed by socio-demographics, right? It's governed by the pain and what people need to mask, and like it's for me, alcohol is probably the worst of all. That's the one that I have the most trouble working with. Just because it's so accepted in our today's society, when and we don't have the support in place to understand things. So
there's also, like, when you look at alcohol's a really interesting concept, especially in the Australian culture. We celebrate it quite a fair bit, and the regulations around it are probably not tight enough. That's, when you look at, one of the things that comes to mind is the percentage of alcohol in drinks now is it's so high. And so, I think when young people, and it's so available, and when you're buying those drinks, there's no education. So a young person could buy a 6-pack or a can of mixed drinks, and they're 1.8 standard drinks per can. That's no education around that, and the harm is considerable.
Well, I think I like this conversation, because I think there needs to be better education about what the impact of excess use is. And I have no issues with people having a drink. However, your values change when you drink, because you're a little less likely to hold a line. You're very little less likely to care about somebody else, and that's with all drugs, right?
Well, and I think that it comes down to education. It really does. I think it's something, again, the stigma and fear that surrounds it shuts down those conversations. And then young people go out into the world, and, there is more drug and alcohol availability to young people than what I think a lot of people realise. And yet, because of the stigma, there is very, very scarce education for them around, what is safe? How do you know what's safe? How do you keep yourself safe? And I think that, I'm privileged to have worked in the sector for a very long time. So they're the conversations that we've started having in our family, is about harm reduction, safety planning. And I think that whilst there is such stigma, such discrimination around drug use, it's, like you said, swept under the carpet, which actually creates more harm. So
100%. 100%. Well, it's interesting, right? Because Dunkley has the highest amount of domestic violence in the state. It also has one of the highest alcohol sales. Dunkley also, in the metropolitan area, has one of the highest suicide rates. Right? And yet we seem to have a burger and beer culture in our community. So,
hey, that's really interesting. Sorry, I get sidetracked.
No, it's good.
Because having worked in the social services sector in the Frankston area for over 20 years, we're actually one of the lowest funded in terms of our support services as well. So our drug and alcohol services, their wait lists have consistently, from 2014, we've run wait lists. We also don't have a local detox or rehabilitation. So it's amazing that you've got those stats, yet you've got such an absence of support and services to address that. So, yeah, sorry, I was just thinking that was, ironic.
Yeah. Well, I could go right down that rabbit warren with you, and I can give you solutions to that. However, it is about you today, and it's important for me to learn more about you. Now, you're a mum. How many kids?
I have 3. My partner has 2. So at home we have 17, 17, 14, 14, and 12.
Awesome.
Yep, it's so much. It is a lot of fun. It actually really is. I love having a house full of adolescents.
So why would a mum with 5 kids want to run for the House of Representatives, especially around legalizing cannabis? Why would a mum want to do that?
The conversations that we have here, I believe, are conversations that we should be having out in the community and at all different levels. So I'm really lucky to have a captive audience of 5 adolescents plus their friends around, reducing that stigma and evidence-based decision-making, all of those things. And I think that being able to have that opportunity, being in politics is a privilege. It is an absolute privilege because you get to have conversations with really diverse community and potentially influence some thinking out there. And when I see the impact that having those conversations can have with adolescents, then it makes me motivated to want to have it with more people in our community. And I'm also, I mentioned before, I'm curious by nature, and I would love to know why people may be opposed to, legalizing cannabis and medicinal cannabis. I would love to know that. So politicians are in a really privileged position to get a really nuanced view of subjects, and that's I guess a bit of a driver for me. So that's around sort of legalized cannabis, but why would I, as a mum, want to run as a candidate? I'm all about empowering voice and young people. I think they're our next generation. They're the ones that are going to potentially change our world. So what better way than to actually role model how you can be part of that change? I love, I think it was in my early 20s, I had "Be the Change" tattooed on my back. And I think I live that. And running, as a candidate is part of being that change. If we want to see change, we really need to show up. We really need to be brave and actually say, this is what I stand for. So that's...
I celebrate that. I celebrate that. Like I know myself as a father, I have learnt that my words should be supporting my actions, not the other way around, where, like, you cannot do anything better than actually demonstrate what it means to create change. I've had Oscar with me since he was 11 years old running the men's dinners. Simply because it's important in order for him to be a man, he needs to be around men who are challenged, so that we can create better dialogue, so that when life throws those curveballs at us, we look at things through a different set of eyes, and we take the opportunity to be curious and actually make better decisions because of that curiosity and not from fear.
Yes, 100%, not from fear. There's so much. If you look across the world, there's a lot of stuff that is driven by false narratives and fear and perpetuating that fear. And unfortunately, political campaigns are exactly the same. I'm not here to talk negatively about any candidates or any parties, because I don't believe it's beneficial to our community. So it drives fear. It's just, bewildering to me.
Look, I applaud that, because so much of the opportunities that are being projected at the moment are fear-based. They're creating more problems and anxiety in people, and it's for what? What's the purpose? To create division, which is not good for us. But
No.
yeah. So I've got to ask. You were part of a project, Next Gen Changemakers. Right? What inspired that?
So I'm an old school youth worker. That's what I call myself. My grounding, I started in youth justice when I was 23, and have worked with young people in the drug and alcohol system, justice system for a majority of that 2 decades. So as you work in places for long times, you tend to start going up the ranks in terms of management. And all of a sudden, I found myself in an executive role where a lot of what I was doing was engaging with government and people in positions of influence. And at the same time, I was still doing a lot of stuff around lived and living experience and consumer participation. So when you are a bridge, really, for key decisions being made at this, upper level, and then still sitting with people in crisis and looking at the way that they're isolated from community and feeling that. And then you're sitting at these ministerial briefings and having a seat at the table, and there's no one representing those voices. So it did become quite impactful for me. It's not burnout, as we typically know it, but what somebody described it as was moral injury. So, having where your values, where what you truly believe really are misaligned with what you're doing, and that takes its toll. So especially when you're passionate about justice and you see a lot of injustice as well. And so I actually stepped away from the sector May last year, 2024, and that few months after that was a period of real discovery. Honestly, I stepped away and I went, shit, what am I going to do now? Like, this has been my life. A huge part of me is who I am in that work context. And I actually left with no job to go to, no idea what I was going to do. And I don't have the privilege of having a lot of wealth behind me. So I had probably 6 weeks buffer to work out what I was going to do with my life. And then during that time, I was just speaking with a new person that I'd met, and this is why I love people. I think we're the same, Scott. I just love to get to know people. And we were speaking about the lack of awareness in our younger people about all things politics and how to be part of community these days and connection, and then that happened to, we were like, and what's more important is not just having it in our school system, because from my experience, there's a lot of young people that don't fit into that traditional system. But their voices are still so valid. And so just had an opportunity to design, then I thought, let's create something. Let's create a program. So that's how it happened. And then I reached out to an old colleague of mine that has a creative arts background, because it's always good to blend arts. And then, we developed Next Gen Changemakers, which is a program that facilitates voice and agency in young people that are often marginalised or disengaged from mainstream school. So it's so much fun, so much fun.
Yeah, I love it. I love a good rat bag myself, right?
Yeah.
Because they're just misplaced. They don't know where they're going. Generally, don't have a great role model, and unfortunately, we've lost the 15-year-olds going into a trade industry, which actually gives them an opportunity to work with their hands. And I think we've really lost an opportunity to see young men improve themselves and give them a big opportunity. Unfortunately, we've got these mature age apprentices, and unfortunately, their skill set's not as great because they haven't had the tools in hand at an early age. Not to knock them, but it makes a significant difference at the ages of 14 through to 19. That if you're around men, they will work with you to give you an opportunity. By the time you get to 19, 20, and you're actually out there trying to get a trade, that's your really strong and formative years. They've made some decisions for you. So
100%. And it's really interesting because, we deliver the program. We have both genders in the room, and we we see the gold in these young people. They're, often, yes, it could be masked under some, very loud and very in-your-face behaviour. But then after a week or two, you unlock a lot of what is underneath. And these young people are phenomenal. They have the skills, abilities, their strengths, their insights, just phenomenal. So why would we not elevate them? Why would we not to show them that they can actually be part of changing the world in a way that they want to see? So at the end of our program, in the last couple of weeks, they develop a social change project themselves, and then they present it. And it could be by a campaign, it could be a poem, it could be anything. And what they come up with is phenomenal. So that's why it's called Next Gen Changemakers, because it is brilliant. So sorry, I get very excited.
No, I love it. Let me know when you need help there. I'll come along and do a bit of a presentation for them, because
I think that would be great. Yeah.
Now we've gone well past half an hour, and I really want to encourage people to watch this. So I want to tighten it up now.
Yep.
So I've got to ask you a question.
I'm prepared.
What reason could you give me to vote for you? One reason.
I have integrity.
Okay. Thank you.
That's
it. I don't want to dive into it. That's enough. Thank you. Yeah. That's
excellent.
Yeah. I've actually really enjoyed our chat today. I've enjoyed learning you. Thank you for taking the time to do this, especially at the moment, because you're a mumsy, you're doing work, and you're trying to, run for the House of Representatives. So, one, I want to thank you for your effort, and two, good luck. Good luck with the opportunity.
Thanks. And again, how privileged I am to be running and then having these conversations, meeting people in the community. I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and thanks for having me.
No worries. I will ask one thing of you. At the end of this campaign, no matter what happens, I would love you to share a summary of the things you have learnt on your journey, whether you're in or not, irrelevant. I would love to learn the lessons that you've learnt, if that's okay.
I would love that. I'm an avid blog writer, so I've got a blog. And when I was deciding to run, I wrote a blog because for me, it was really important to get to the bottom of why. why is so important. And then I was already thinking, sorry, I know we're over. I was already thinking, I have learned so much. I need to write it. So I guarantee I will send that through to you.
Magical. All right. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today. And I really hope people, take this for what it is, to get an understanding of who and why you're running for, the state of Dunkley. All right. Take care, Lisa. Thank you, Joel.
See ya. Bye.
Wait, now I've got to find that button. Hang on a sec. Where's that button?